Folks, top of the morning. Happy Friday. Welcome to the Freedom from the Press podcast. My name is Jason Robertson, and I'm here with my co-host,
Todd Peterson. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming and joining us on this wonderful Friday here. A little chilly in Minnesota, but that's how it is. And Jason, like I always say, we got to comment on the weather because that's what we do here.
It's funny. We enjoyed like 3 weeks of decent weather, and now it's 30 degrees and raining. And I'm looking out at my yard going, how the heck am I going to clean up all these leaves? Hey, Todd, what does keep you nice and warm, though?
A nice cup of coffee. I was clicking on the banner.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah, folks, we have a great sponsorship with a local company up here in Minnesota. And if you want to support their work and support our work as well, you can go to splitrockcoffee.com, use promo code TODD10. Jason, I am now officially a promo code, but go to TODD10 at splitrockcoffee.com. Save a little bit of money on some delicious coffee. I'm drinking some right now, and it's getting me ready to go for this podcast today. Apparently,
and I tell you what, today we have a fired up podcast. There's so much going on in the news. There's World War III break-in. There's economic numbers that are all over. And we wanted to take a break today. Oh, and just to preview, too, we're going to have our first guest on the Freedom from the Press podcast here in a little bit, Mr. Matt
Very
Webster,
excited about that.
Politics. Super excited to have him here. But where we wanted to start today, we feel that the press is the enemy of the people. And we feel that the messaging that is going out to Americans all over from our establishment media is just destroying the country. They're telling half-truths, flat-out lies, and the narrative they spin causes people who aren't paying attention to instantly feel a certain way and act a certain way and demonize people. And today we're going to be drawing the comparison contrast between what did the media say about President Trump and how the world was going to end and all these awful things versus how are they reporting on Joe Biden, who's actually doing these crazy things like World War III and tax evasion and corruption and all that. So we got a lot to go over. So buckle up, folks.
Yeah, Jason, this is really exciting. If you want to have some fun with your friends, and again, we don't encourage anyone to lose friendships over this. We always talk about stressing the value of family, friendship, community. So don't go out of your way and ruin one of those things. But ask one of your leftist or liberal friends who voted maybe for Joe Biden or just did not vote for Donald Trump. Maybe they sat out the election, and ask them about, what about Trump rubs you the wrong way? Or why didn't you like Trump as president? And then ask them the same question about Joe Biden. You're going to get some really interesting answers. And if you really want to dig into the Trump, they're going to say, I don't like him. And then you're going to dig into that a little bit more. Like, what don't you like about his policies? And they're going to stare back at you. I'm predicting it right now. They will have nothing to say about Donald Trump's policies. They've been framed to believe that Donald Trump's an awful human being. He's bad, MAGA bad, Orange Man bad. But if you get into the weeds a little bit, they really have nothing of substance. We could talk about his policies a little bit if we wanted to. He was not a perfect president. No man is. But ask them, especially if they did not vote for him or voted for his opponent, and their responses will be enlightening.
And actually, folks, we already have some exciting stuff in the chat. Democrats Against Fake News, a Facebook page. Thanks for tuning in, folks. We really appreciate you. Their comment, when was Joe Biden's insurrection? What top secret documents did Biden have his people hide? How pathetic, duh. See, folks, this is the battle we're facing. So here are the facts of Joe Biden's documents. And this wasn't even on the agenda. Joe Biden, when he was a senator, kept classified documents. When he was vice president, he kept classified documents. He took those documents and stored them in his freaking garage. He also stored them in the Biden Penn Center that was paid for by the Chinese Communist Party at the University of Pennsylvania. We covered this on our documents episode when we talked about it. And these were unguarded. The FBI never searched his house. They didn't raid him, and they don't know what his classified documents were or weren't. But you have folks like Democrats Against Fake News who've been brainwashed because they listen to CNN, they listen to MSNBC. They don't even have any idea what happened with Joe Biden's documents, because while there's been 5 million stories about President Trump's documents, there's been like 2 about Joe Biden's. And if you look at how Joe Biden's documents were actually handled by him, like, you'd be appalled. you'd be like, wait a second, this guy had cases of top secret documents in his garage, in the house that Hunter Biden, the drug addict with all the crazy stuff, was staying at. Some of those documents they actually found in his house, in his library, in the house. So and if you think just like your house, like some stuff traveled from the garage in the house, but people don't know. And folks like Democrats Against Fake News, like, thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you can learn something today. This is crazy. Todd,
yeah, Jason, just a couple thoughts. Hunter Biden listed one of the houses where those documents were stored as his official residence. He paid rent to Joe Biden for living in that house, this, at least on paper, covering up goodness knows what. But imagine Hunter Biden has access to these documents. We know that Hunter Biden made a lot of money overseas. And this is speculation, but I think we talk about connecting the dots sometimes. What do you think Hunter Biden, if he had access to those documents, did in order to make a lot of money? Again, we can't prove anything, but it certainly raises a lot of questions. And Jason, just to that point about Donald Trump having documents and Joe Biden having documents, do you know the difference constitutionally between a former president having documents and a vice president having documents?
Oh, I do, Todd, but I think some of our viewers might not.
I think our viewers might not. So Donald Trump, just to be clear, has full constitutional authority to keep classified documents. He can declassify at any time by right of being president. So the action of him taking anything is perfectly legal and within the bounds of the Constitution. Joe Biden, as vice president or senator, does not have that same benefit under the law. The Constitution does not say that as vice president or senator, you can declassify at any time. And so, again, Democrats Against Fake News, thanks for watching us. Thanks for participating and throwing that out there. It took us on an interesting tangent right off the bat here today, but vastly different scenario just looking at the legality of that situation.
Well, yeah, and it's a perfect example for what we're going to talk about today, folks. I think Democrats Against Fake News, I don't think they're awful people. I've never met them before. They probably love their country. They probably do cookouts. They probably are good people, just like the rest of us. They have been brainwashed by a mainstream media that only spins one narrative, and they fully believe that in their bones. And that's what we're trying to fight is like, folks, wake up, figure out your government is corrupt. All the things they've told you about President Trump and how awful he is and how terrible, Joe Biden and the rest of our government is completing that, is doing that. And they're doing it in front of you, and they're getting away with it because the media is not reporting on that.
Yeah. And Jason, just on that point here, we might as well stay off script a little bit longer. So yesterday, Twitter was blowing up with the story that Mark Meadows, Trump's former chief of staff, allegedly had a wire the entire time and worked with the FBI to record all of the conversations in the White House. Today, that story was clarified. That doesn't seem to be true right now. However, and again, I'll point out that the reporter that broke the story also retracted it and pointed out that his sources had walked that statement back. So as of right now, that story is not true. It's been debunked by the same person that broke it. But my initial reaction was, I believe this. The government has done so much, to your point, Jason, about being so corrupt that for me to believe that Trump's own chief of staff would collaborate with the deep state to out him, given everything we've seen with Russia collusion, with the impeachments, with all the other things said about Trump, I didn't even question it. I was just like, of course this happened. They would do anything to get after Trump.
Right. Well, and another story that's not on our agenda, and we'll get on agenda, folks, in a minute. We're just, I think too much caffeine in the Split Rock coffee. It's got us all fired up today. But this week it came out, too, from Chuck Grassley's office that the FBI had the numbers up to 40 different people embedded and engaged with the Biden family business. And they were stopping the Department of Justice from investigating this back as far as 2017 has been confirmed, and there's speculation back to like 2014, 15, 16. So if you think about that, the FBI had people swimming in this circle. And we talked about it on one of our episodes when they went to impeach President Trump about asking about investigating the Ukrainian business deals. That would have been the perfect time for our FBI to come and say, hey, you know what, guys? Well, we've already been kind of looking into this, and there's something here because we've got like 40 agents involved in it. It's, I mean, it's insane. It's just completely
just can't
insane.
get over it. All right, Jason, we're 10 minutes in. Should we hit the agenda?
Let's go to the agenda. Todd, where do we want to start?
Let's start off the top here. We'll bounce around, but possible World War III. So we all remember the narrative when Trump took office. I mean, from day one, people like Hillary Clinton were saying Trump's going to get us into World War III. He's reckless. He's unhinged. He has thin skin. So, you know, the slightest slightest comment from Kim Jong-un or from Vladimir Putin, he's going to hit those buttons and launch the nukes because he can't handle the criticism. So we had all that happening. If you're watching us live here, I just pulled a couple headlines from Trump's presidency, and these are dated from 2017 to 2020. So this was not just a one-time thing. This happened throughout his administration. We have one that says, this is how Trump could start World War III, and then the article would go a little bit into detail. Next headline asks, is the U.S. headed for World War III? Here's what experts say as Twitter fears the worst. And then you have CNN writing, Trump setting U.S. on path to World War III. Again, like I said, one of these was related to his interactions with North Korea. Jason, I have not heard anything from North Korea. I certainly didn't in Trump's administration. They've gone quiet now, so maybe something happened. We'll give Trump the benefit of the doubt for that one. Another time, he took out just the mass murdering psychopath Soleimani, and he had a very targeted strike against him, saved a lot of lives, I would argue. But again, that assassination people were feared would start World War III. Let's pop up another headline here from HuffPost, I believe it is. Did Donald Trump just start World War III? So we were inundated with headlines like this throughout the administration. I don't remember World War III happening, though.
Yeah, I'm old enough to remember 2016 through 2020, and I'm old enough to remember first president ever to pull back troops from across the world, first president ever to not start new conflicts, first president ever to, actually cut back and scale down on this stuff. Russia was quiet. I mean, Russia took over part of Ukraine in the Obama administration, and now they've taken over part of the Ukraine in the Biden administration. Communist China is behind a lot of this stuff. But now we sit on the precipice of real World War III. And we've been talking about that on our show. We've been writing about it on our news sites. If you look, so you've got the Ukraine-Russia thing, which Russia's just kicking Ukraine's tails, folks. I don't know how to break it to you. And we've just been spending millions and billions of dollars in Ukraine, just funneling money in there. We covered on a previous episode, too, how our military industrial contractors, Alexander Vindman being one of them, are just sucking up that money while this conflict continues on. Now we've got the Israel-Gaza stuff, which we could do a whole episode on what's going on over there. But essentially, you have a holy war starting between the Arab countries and Hamas and Israel. And once again, we're getting sucked into the quagmire. We're starting to send billions of dollars over there. And just last night, we actually sent missiles into Serbia, if I remember right, to hit Iranian positions. Think of that, folks. We are poking the Iranian bear, which has nuclear weapons. Like, they've been wanting to get into a heated conflict with America for years. But when you log on and you look at these news sites, Todd, what kind of news are you hearing? Are you hearing about how close we are to World War III?
I see a lot of headlines about how Mike Johnson's MAGA, pro-Trump, election denying, insurrection leading, House Speaker. So I see a lot of that, but I don't see a lot of news about World War III, despite the fact that we have deployed aircraft carriers. I read a tweet from Charlie Kirk today. I haven't verified it, but he said that 900 soldiers have deployed or are about to be deployed to that region. He makes the comment that that's how the Vietnam War started, right? We had our military advisors over in Southeast Asia a couple decades ago. So I don't see a time in recent memory where we have not been closer to World War III. And I don't see an administration replete with the Democrats and neocons. You have people like Lindsey Graham, childless Lindsey Graham, who has no one in his family that would go serve. He certainly isn't going to be serving on the front lines, but he's advocating for just a full-blown assault in the region. He wants to send our military to its full capacity into this area, and they want to provoke Iran. And I don't understand the logic behind it. But it's quite frightening. And again, as we're contrasting this to the Trump administration, lots of empty rhetoric and news headlines about him starting World War III, but Biden's getting us really close. Jason, I'll just add too, John Kirby, his spokesman, I believe former admiral in the military as well, even said that we expect people to lose lives in this Israel-Palestine conflict. And he was completely glib about it. Like, yep, people die in conflicts. And that seems to be the mentality. Like, yeah, we're going to lose some soldiers over there, but it's worth it because Israel, I guess.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit last week about the Israel conflict. I mean, what Hamas did to Israel is terrible. Hamas, who is the duly elected government of the Gaza Strip, they are, their mission statement, we went through it in last week's episode, they want to eliminate all the Jews in Israel. And as Americans, we could look at that and go, whoa, whoa, whoa. But also as Americans, we have to ask an honest question and say, do we really want to get into, do we really want to get sucked into World War III? And I mean, it's a valid discussion. And if we had an honest media, that would be the discussion we're having, because every expert says we have never been closer to a nuclear conflict, maybe since the Cold War or the Cuban Missile Crisis, than we are today. But the media is not covering it. And that's part of why we do what we do, Todd. That's why we'll ask everybody, if you like what we're doing, go to the AmericanTribune.news, support our work, but more importantly, share it, and try to share it with people like the folks we talked about earlier who just don't understand any of this stuff's going on, because they have to get exposed to this information so that they start to wake up before we lose our country.
Absolutely. And I hope Democrats Against Fake News is still watching. And I haven't seen anything pop in the comments, but would love to hear thoughts on that. I would argue that Donald Trump, through his foreign policy, created the safest environment that we've had in a long time, peace throughout the world, kind of that Reagan philosophy of peace through strength. He didn't mess around, certainly not thin skinned, but he did not mess around when it came to foreign policy and dealing with dictators. Joe Biden is a weak president. He's a corrupt president, so that plays into it as well, but you can see the fallout of that. And so someone like Democrats Against Fake News, I imagine, I'll just assume, voted for Joe Biden, probably hated Donald Trump, but how are your emotions? How did the emotions do for you? Where we're at now, because of kind of thoughts like that, we're asking people to reflect on, okay, I don't like this person, but what about their policies don't I like? And I dare say, I don't know if there's a lot of policies that person could disagree with.
Right. And we're probably not going to get lost in this one, but Carrie adds a great comment. We're on the brink of World War III, and we all have open borders. Scary. Yeah, folks. And I don't think we have the graphic for today. But since Joe Biden's been president and they've allowed all these millions and millions and millions of people into America, they've allowed in so many people that we have no idea who they are. They show up at the border. We let them in. They scan them in. They set a court date 2-3 years. They give them $2,200 and send them wherever they want to go. But we have let in more people than all but not. Oh, you do have the graphic. If you look at the illegal aliens since Joe Biden took office, 8 million people have come in. That is more than all but 13 states. So there's 12 states that have a higher population than the population that has come in under Joe Biden. Todd, what do you think about that?
Here, let's let Senator John Kennedy talk about that, and then we can comment on that for sure.
President Biden's been president. How many non-American citizens have come into our country illegally? 8 million is 4 Nebraskas, 4 new states since President Biden's been president. How many non?
All right, just a quick clip from Kennedy there pointing out the same stats, Jason, that you were just referencing. And if you're watching live, you can see the graphic up here. 8 million people. And Jason, connecting that to October 13th, 2 weeks ago, we did our podcast, and that was the day where they had the Day of Jihad announced. Thankfully, nothing really came to pass, but okay, I'm doing the math in my head. 8 million illegal aliens coming across the border. How many do you need to do that are going to do real damage? 50, 100? I mean, percentage-wise, it'd be negligible, but it doesn't take a lot of folks to come in and do some real damage in big cities or whatnot. And we don't know who these people are. They're not vetted. So when we talk about wars overseas, we can very easily see how the conflict over there, if we rile people up, are there sleeper agents? Right now we're putting the tinfoil hat on a little bit, but should we do our tinfoil hat segment, Jason?
Dun, dun, dun.
Oh, we got to do our music
tinfoil hat for a minute, folks. Folks, in the comments, we need Todd to get his own tinfoil hat. All right, just going full tinfoil hat for a minute. 8 million people came in. Pop quiz, how many people did all the atrocities in Israel that we saw? Todd, do you know the number?
I'm going to say 100 off the top of my head.
It was about 1,200 people is what they're saying. 1,200 people did all that death and destruction. And so we have cities, we have 8 million people around. We have cities with hundreds of thousands of people. Oh, by the way, what have they done in those cities? They've started removing police. They've stopped enforcing laws. They've defunded the police. Folks, I'm not telling you anything's going to happen. I pray to God nothing does, but you don't have to be a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist to actually think that this presents a real problem. once again, that all Americans should be concerned about. And your liberal friends don't know 8 million people are here. They don't know we don't know anything about them. They don't know that it only took 1,200 people to throw the entire country of Israel in upheaval. I mean, if you look at January 11 or 9/11, you were talking like 15, 20 people up to like 100 people that did that. Like this is bad, folks, and we shouldn't do that.
And
But
Jason,
it doesn't just
comment on
stop
that too. Oh, I cut you off there.
Oh, I was going to say it doesn't just stop there though with this brainwashing and these double standards, Todd. Where do we travel to next?
Well, let's hop to the agenda here. So possible tax evasion. Again, let's put on our, let's go back in time, 5 years? Donald Trump, he had those tax returns. Donald Trump didn't pay his taxes. We have to know what the president's making because he has all of his private business. And somehow now that he's in the White House, he's going to go full-blown corrupt. He's going to take advantage of his existing private businesses, monetize that. I don't recall Donald Trump taking a salary in the White House, which strikes me as odd for someone that wouldn't want to make as much money as possible while serving as president of the United States. So there's that. But on day one, Donald Trump got sued by, insert leftist group here. It doesn't really matter who it was. They were called Crew, but he was hated by everybody. But he was sued because he had a lot of businesses, and they were worried about his violation of what's called the emolument clause, where he had potential unconstitutional corruption that could result from his refusal to divest from his business interests. So, okay, here we go again. Donald Trump's going to make a lot of money off his businesses. I don't know, Jason. I just didn't see it, but boy, did we really hammer that home for 4 years. Donald Trump's corrupt. Donald Trump has businesses. I got a neat little graphic here we can pop up, but if you want to take it away for a second.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you remember back to Donald Trump, the big thing that they were talking about when President Trump was taking office is they were talking about how he was going to leverage it to monetize his business. And that ended up not being the case. It turned out that that Donald Trump actually lost money. He was one of the first presidents. Hey, I do just got to hop into replying to the comments. Folks, really active chat box today. We really love it and appreciate it. We do have Gene, who I can't put the comments up, talking about a vaccine mandate group that got banned on Facebook. Hey, Gene, send us a message on Twitter. You've got our Twitter handles at JRob from MN. Facebook is not a platform where we can go into those topics. And the comment on there is, hey, Facebook banned you today. Please don't put that in our comments because we can't be banned on there either. So if you need to help get word out, send us a note offline. We'll be glad to help promote your stuff. But back to Trump stuff. We also heard a ton about Trump's golf trips.
Yeah,
and go with that.
And you know what, Jason? Donald Trump owned golf courses. What do you want us to say? He had successful businesses all over the world. And so if you're Donald Trump and you're president and you have these beautiful golf courses and estates, it would make perfect sense to utilize them. Now, from a logistical standpoint, if the president's going to travel, he's going to take Secret Service with him. They're going to pay God knows how much money to put these people in hotels and rent out a space. And so, yep, he went to his own places. He knows them. He takes care of them. He trusts his people there. He has to travel somewhere. Let's not pretend that presidents don't jet across the world and meet people in all sorts of, expensive, more than they need to be, but okay, they're nice places. So Donald Trump goes to his golf courses, and this now becomes a huge issue because he's getting paid for going there on a business trip. Okay.
The other point too to make about that, when Joe Biden goes places, you don't think there's some kickback or from where he's staying, that you don't think there's some back end work where like, hey, come stay at our hotel or our beach place or whatnot.
Here, can I read a headline from New Year's Eve of 2022, Jason?
Go for it.
About Joe Biden stayed at a St. Croix villa of wealthy donors who got a state dinner invite.
Huh. That's ironic.
So, Jason, what do you think is worse? Donald Trump goes to his own golf courses and hosts people there, or Joe Biden has these mega donors that host him and get nice little kickbacks like state dinners, ambassador positions, who knows what else in the administration. So I'm not seeing it, Jason.
And it's so funny because, the topic of the episode, everything that's said about Trump came true with Biden. I mean, this is pure, like, folks, this is government corruption. Like, they were accusing Trump. There was all these headlines about, oh, Trump's going to his own golf courses. And the fact of the matter was, too, if you really dig into that, he was selling the rooms at cost. He was having them stay there at cost. So it was insane.
Okay, Jason, I think this is a perfect time for us to show the 2016 debate between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Let's talk about taxes a little bit more, and then you and I get to really go in depth on Joe Biden's tax situation. I think this video is going to speak for itself. This is vintage Trump right here. This is what made America fall in love with him. He is so blunt, so brutally honest, and cuts through all of the political BS. This has got to be one of my top 5 Trump videos that we've seen here. So let's take a look.
You use that $916 million loss to avoid paying personal federal income taxes for
Of course I do. Of course I do. And so do all of her donors, or most of her donors. I know many of her donors. Her donors took massive tax write-offs.
So have
a
you
lot
not
of
paid
my
personal federal income tax?
A lot of my write-off was depreciation and other things that Hillary, as a senator, allowed. And she'll always allow it because the people that give her all this money, they want it. That's why. See, I understand the tax code better than anybody that's ever run for president. Hillary Clinton, and it's extremely complex, Hillary Clinton has friends that want all of these provisions, including they want the carried interest provision, which is very important to Wall Street people, but they really want the carried interest provision, which I believe Hillary's leaving. It's very interesting why she's leaving carried interest. But I will tell you that, number one, I pay tremendous numbers of taxes. I absolutely used it, and so did Warren Buffett, and so did George Soros, and so did many of the other people that Hillary is getting money from. Now, I won't mention their names because they're rich, but they're not famous, so we won't make them famous.
Can you say how many years you have avoided paying personal federal income taxes?
No, but I pay tax, and I pay federal tax, too. But I have a write-off. A lot of it's depreciation, which is a wonderful charge. I love depreciation. You know, she's given it to us. Hey, if she had a problem, for 30 years she's been doing this, Anderson. I say it all the time. She talks about health care. Why didn't she do something about it? She talks about taxes. Why didn't she do something about it? She doesn't do anything about anything other than talk. With her, it's all talk and no action.
In the past...
And again, Bernie Sanders, it's really bad judgment. She has made bad judgment not only on taxes, she's made bad judgments on Libya, on Syria, on Iraq.
All right, we'll pause it right there. He just keeps going and going, and every single word is correct. It's hilarious because he's just calling Hillary out to her face, but it is so accurate.
Well, yeah, and it's fascinating. So to go back in time, and we've heard about the Trump tax returns, and oh my God, he's doing this, and oh my God, he's doing. We've heard about this since 2015, and Trump released his taxes, and Trump flat out told you, yes, I am a businessman. I'm going to look at the tax code. I'm going to do the same thing every American citizen is. I'm going to claim every deduction I'm legally able to do. And, you know, when he got his taxes, no, there was no issues. There was no fraud. There was no anything. And then they accuse him of this, and they try to make it sound like he's doing something illegal. But now, and it was every news story, like how many articles and headlines did you see about Trump's tax returns? But now Todd had done some digging into Joe Biden's tax returns. Todd, what have you found in Joe Biden's tax returns?
Well, let's not bury the lead, Jason. So here's the bottom line. Once Joe Biden left office, so we're going to focus on his 2017 and 2018 tax returns. When he left office, he starts doing the speaking circuit. He starts writing books. He starts having his name on a book. I doubt he's writing it. His business did quite well, though. So, Jason, in those couple of years, he made $13 million. Okay, that's a lot of money. If you're following along here, you can read this. I'm just going to read it out loud here. So it says, Joe Biden paid himself a salary of only 1.51% of his company's net income. That rose to 9.9% of the company's net income in 2018. In total, he paid himself about $800,000 out of the $13 million that he earned. Joe Biden was responsible for, he formed a company. We'll get into kind of the layers of that, how he got around the tax system a little bit. Jason and I have some experience in that as well here. So he forms a company. That company makes $13 million because of all the work Joe Biden does speaking and writing. And he paid himself 6% total in those 2 years of what that made. So you want to talk about tax fraud? We have some blatant tax fraud right here. So Jason, you want to jump in there and then we can break down.
Yeah, I was going to say, so for those who don't understand, you know, kind of what we're talking about, and you haven't had an S corp and that kind of thing. So if Joe Biden, who is the only entity that's really doing business in this speaking gig, which if you dig into who paid him the millions of dollars to speak in 2017, there's a lot of dots to connect with companies that he did favors for, people that were working through Hunter Biden's corporation or all those sorts of things. But there's two ways you can do it. And honestly, what Joe Biden did here wasn't illegal. He took steps to minimize his tax return that was in a really gray area, because instead of paying himself a good rate, he let the money sit in the company, so he pays a lower tax rate. So it's exactly what they were accusing President Trump of doing, is leveraging the tax code to minimize his payment. Now, when he's on the debate stage, how many questions did they ask him about that? How many articles, how many headlines, how many reporters who've interviewed him said, "Hey, Joe, you guys were accusing President Trump of minimizing his stuff so that he paid the least taxes he could. And you're making that sound to be like a bad thing. But you're actually doing that. Like, I've got your tax return right here and can see you did the exact same thing that you're trying to demonize President Trump for." But you know what, folks? Go search CNN, go search MSNBC, go search any of these mainstream news companies. You will not find a single report about that. So your Democrat friend is going to hear, "Oh yeah, Trump does all this crazy tax stuff to pay his little taxes. What a bad guy." And none of that was shown in his taxes. But you can see just the plain evidence right here of Joe Biden doing it. And half the country doesn't even know what happened.
I was just going to say about not knowing here. So we all know about Trump's taxes and that was a scandal. And so the facts have been cleared out, but the emotion remains. Like, people now remember in their heads, there was something about Donald Trump and his taxes. He's probably a bad guy. And I don't mean to pick on Democrats against fake news. You're kind of our proxy for all people encompassing this mindset. But how many people are even aware, like you said, Jason, that this is even a story? Not even a story, just this is actually what happened. And I would go on to guess that very few Biden supporters, voters, are even aware that he's been implicated in these tax issues here. So just to expand on this a little bit more here, just to throw out some numbers, Joe Biden paid himself a salary of $126,000 in the first year. He gave 57 speeches. Okay, keep those numbers in your head. So he made about $125,000, given 57 speeches in 2017. Just as a comparison, Hillary Clinton charged $225,000 per speech in the same year. Now, Clinton, Biden, you could make some arguments that Clinton's speeches might be worth more, but does it make sense that he would give 57 speeches and basically make half of what she did for the entire year? Jason talked about a gray area in the tax code, and it is because the IRS, when you form an S corp, says that you can pay yourself a reasonable salary, and reasonable is up for interpretation. But I think we're looking at this and we're saying that doesn't seem very reasonable to me. What I see is someone taking advantage of that gray area. They're going to pay themselves the bare minimum, not even the bare minimum, below the bare minimum, so that they aren't responsible for some of the self-employment taxes they get tacked on that Jason and I have talked about in previous episodes too.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, folks. And like I say, we're not saying Joe Biden did anything wrong or illegal. The point we're trying to make is the way the media manipulates this information to make it look like Trump is the Antichrist for trying to pay the least taxes he can. Meanwhile, Joe Biden, who's actually way in the gray area, like he's in that, like, if you got your tax guy doing your taxes where they're like, it's pushing it. Like, that's where he's living in, not a peep.
Yep. And Jason, I'm going to really hammer this point home. We're probably beating a dead horse at this point. The question that comes up here, and again, it's up on the screen here, but I'll just read it. Wouldn't you think that a business that earned approximately $10 million, in which capital was not a material income producing factor, and in which the personal services provided by the shareholders accounts for the corporation's success, should compensate its shareholder employees more generously? In other words, Joe Biden's company made $13 million because Joe Biden gave speeches and wrote books. That's it. The company didn't have any other streams of major revenue. It was because Joe Biden went out and did X or Y. So how is it, this person is asking, or we can all ask, how is it that Joe Biden made 6% of the company's money when he generated nearly 100% of it? That's the exploitation of the gray area.
Right. Todd, this stuff just gets my blood boiling. I don't know about you. You know, and I think what's worse, and we can probably skip to, we touched on the corrupt son-in-law stuff a little bit. We should probably skip to the unifying figure, because that really gets me upset too. So if you look back at the President Trump era, really Americans had it pretty good up until COVID. The interest rates were amazing. The, economic growth was really good. And I don't mean like these BS reports the government puts out. And we talked about that on a previous episode, how these numbers are fudged. And I love when you see that, when it's like unemployment's really good and inflation's really good, and look at what Joe Biden's doing. And then normal people go to the grocery store and they're like, why does my stuff cost all this so much more? And you just know that the government's lying to you. But when you talk about a unifying figure, so you've got the media working in overdrive, trying to make Trump seem like the Antichrist, and then Joe Biden comes in. And Todd, how did Joe Biden come in? What did he say he was going to do for the country?
Let's let Joe Biden tell us himself.
Charlottesville, Virginia is home to the author of one of the great documents in human history. We know it by heart. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. We've heard it so often, it's almost a cliche, but it's who we are. We haven't always lived up to these ideals. Jefferson himself didn't, but we have never before walked away from them. Charlottesville is also home to a defining moment for this nation in the last few years. It was there on August of 2017 we saw Klansmen and white supremacists and neo-Nazis come out in the open. Their crazed faces, illuminated by torches, veins bulging and bearing the fangs of racism, chanting the same anti-Semitic bile heard across Europe in the 30s. And they were met by a courageous group of Americans, and a violent clash ensued.
All right, I just got to pause it there. I don't know if I can listen to a lot of Joe. We have a couple of Joe clips we're going to pop up showing his unity. So he goes on to say that America's better than that. That doesn't represent us. Jason, the point of the video, this is how he launched his 2020 campaign cycle. He's trying to paint every single person that supports Donald Trump in that light. Make no mistake, he's not saying there was a small crowd of people there that have horrible ideas, racist ideas. He's saying that if you support Donald Trump, you are on that side of that protest in Charlottesville. And we've also gone through Charlottesville in previous podcasts, and we've debunked that whole myth and narrative. But that is anything but unifying, right? When you're trying to cast the entire country, half the country, as vile, racist extremists.
Yeah, and it's remarkable too, because right now you see many people across America that are supporting horrible things that happened, and they're supporting a lot of stuff that happened to Israelis, and you just don't see them speaking out against that. It's ridiculous.
And Jason, there was a picture of a flag on this video that Biden intentionally used. I've seen that flag crop up again in some of these protests you're referring to, which is an interesting dichotomy, right? So the way that Biden framed up Trump supporters, and we all know the word that they used for Donald Trump and his supporters throughout his presidency as well. But I see that cropping back up in the current conflict in the Middle East, and I'm not hearing from Joe Biden condemning that or calling that out.
Yeah, it's truly remarkable. Hey, Todd, should we transition to Mr. Matt Webster? I know we haven't quite covered everything on our agenda
here. Let's.
I mean, for folks, we are honored to have one Mr. Matthew Webster on our podcast today. I'll let him introduce himself. And I apologize as we get used to resending our guest. Matt, you're the first official guest we've had on the Freedom from the Press podcast. We're honored
seriously?
to have you here. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
I thought you guys were. Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Oh yeah,
you're coming in loud and clear.
Excellent. Good. I thought for sure with the worldwide fame that you guys had achieved, I would be a 50th or 60th guest by now. But so I am actually honored to be the first guest of the show. So that's awesome. Jason and I know each other. Todd and I sort of know each other a little bit, through the dotted line connection to Jason. So hi, Todd. It's a pleasure to be around with you.
Yeah, good to have you on, Webby. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it. So my name is Matt. My last name is Webster. My friends call me Webby. So I guess now I got a whole nation of friends that are going to call me Webby now. So that's cool.
You're Webby on the podcast now.
I love it, man. I love it. And I am the editor of Trending Politics magazine. By the way, this is the latest edition. Wanted for making America great again. Trending Politics magazine. So I guess you guys know where we stand on that. And man, I'm just like happy to be here and to be talking about this. When Jason shared or Todd actually shared with me the topics of conversation for today, I was like, how appropriate with what's going on right now that we'd be talking about this. I mean, Joe Biden sure has achieved a lot. I mean, it's a laundry list of stuff. There's at least nothing on that list. So I'm glad we're talking about it today.
Well, not nothing, Webby, if I can highlight that, because if you caught the early part of the program, we are getting closer to World War III. If you've seen previous episodes, we do have higher inflation. So there are accomplishments out there.
Oh, I should have prefaced that with positive accomplishments.
Yeah. And it's funny. We joke about that because that's how the news media reports this stuff. And I use this example ad nauseum. People are sick of it, but it's like they get out there and say the Minnesota Vikings, because we all live in Minnesota, greatest Super Bowl team ever. They have a perfect Super Bowl record. And people that aren't paying attention go, oh my, yeah. They go, oh my God, the Minnesota Vikings have a perfect Super Bowl record. They're undefeated. When in reality, what's the Minnesota Vikings Super Bowl record, Webby?
They're 0-4.
Right. So technically, I'm telling the truth, right? They have a perfect Super Bowl record.
That's something else. No, well, you're right, Todd. I mean, the first thing that was on your list was this. Here we are on the brink of World War III, and that was the thing that, especially with the events that are going on right now in Israel, that was probably the most striking thing on the list. Now, there's all kinds of things, obviously, and I've been listening, while you guys have been talking, making really great points and giving some pretty irrefutable examples of how, this is like, obviously the American people were tricked, right? But this World War III situation ratchets it up to another level right now that you almost look at all of these other things and go, well, we could be not talking about any of those things because we're going to be embroiled in tens of thousands of people dying at a pace that we haven't seen since World War II, making it World War III. And I don't think people really understand that. I mean, mainstream media certainly doesn't tell the story. There's a lot of anti-Israel rhetoric that's going on right now. Which is weird because you can pick all kinds of, there's facts that you can pick on either side to certainly support that, both sides of that conflict haven't been right. It's also thousands of years old, so people don't really understand what's going on. But I don't think that people are landing on the right side of this issue right now with the information that they have, and they don't understand how bad this is going to make our world. And if they don't think that this is coming here to the United States, it's already coming to the United States. These people that are causing the issues with Hamas, Hezbollah, and other terrorist organizations are literally coming through our southern border right now. I think they captured 163 of them. I may be wrong about that number, but I'm close. Just last month alone, these were people that were on the terrorist watch list coming across the southern border. So it's literally coming to America. Like, it's been here, but they're flooding across the border now. So if they think that this isn't happening right here in the United States, it's happening right here in the United States. Far worse than people imagine. But
yeah, Webby, you bring up a really interesting point there. Oh, I didn't mean to cut you off if you had more to say. I just wanted to comment on that last piece.
But great topics today. It's amazing, this conversation.
Yeah, thanks. You made a comment earlier about just kind of where we're at here and with who is supporting what right now. If you had asked me 10 years ago that the Democrat Party, I could probably get on board with that, but certainly the Democrat voters 10 years ago would have been anti-war, would have been anti-intervention. And it never ceases to amaze me to see all of these Twitter and Facebook bios and comments from just regular Americans saying we should keep sending money overseas to Europe. We should now commit resources over to the Middle East. And then to your point, maybe supporting the wrong side. They want to send resources to the Middle East and maybe not even to the right option right now, but the intervention of foreign policy right now from the very same people that protested against George Bush 20 years ago. I didn't see the same rise of rhetoric 10 years ago even, but suddenly everyone that votes Democrat seems to want to get us involved with money, with military. It's something I would not have expected.
I would agree with that. I would agree. It does seem like a convenient distraction, though.
Yeah, I was gonna say, as somebody who, like, I've been conservative for a long time, Matt and Todd have as well. And it's funny to find ourselves on the side of peacemaker and like, can we stop blowing other countries up? You know, if you grew up like I was a young man in the Bush era when it was like every 2 weeks. Uh, it's like, hey, let's go find another Middle Eastern country we can send troops to and go blow things up and then go rebuild them. And now it's like, can we just stop blowing up other countries and just focus on making America great again? And yeah, and now we're the crazy like Russian supporters because we don't want to go fight a war in Ukraine. So, Webby, one thing I wanted to touch on too. So for those who don't know, we mentioned the Trending Politics newsletter. And I shared the link in the comments for folks who want to subscribe to it. So for the past 2-3 years, Trending Politics has actually done a hard copy newsletter. They also have a website, trendingpoliticsnews.com. But we talk about censorship and reach and stuff on the podcast. And the newsletter's something Matt's been doing now for over a year, if I remember right, as editor in chief. And not only is it does it produce great pieces of content, but it can be uncensored because it's a hard copy newsletter that gets in your mailbox. And like I had commented earlier, somebody was talking about Vax stuff and their Vax group in the comments. Like, we can't put that on Facebook, folks. There are some things we can't talk about. The stuff we put on the AmericanTribune.news, like those are articles that if we shared on our mainstream sites, like our site would get deleted. And so, Matt, can you talk a little bit about kind of what content you put in there and how it's different maybe from what they'll see other places?
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I appreciate you bringing that up. Trending Politics magazine is interesting because, look, and we've joked around about this before. They haven't figured out a way yet, although I'm sure that someone in the government's working on it, but they haven't figured out how to censor your mailbox yet. Now, if you happen to be that guy that comes outside and you see him cutting down your mailbox or something, let us know, but they haven't figured it out yet today. So Trending Politics newsletter, Trending Politics, the hard copy magazine, is important because honestly, we can talk about anything. There is no subject that is off limits. So, you brought up, whether it's Vax subject matter or anything else really that is difficult to do on social media or sometimes even our websites, trendingpoliticsnews.com. I mean, we get flagged for stuff all the time because we're just trying to be honest with people and tell the story. And, somebody doesn't like it, right? Trending Politics magazine is definitely not that. So our goal, the mission there is to try to just give people as much information as possible from every angle, right? Whether sometimes it's a conservative magazine, but we like to tell both sides of the story so that you can make informed decisions, whether it's talking about candidates, whether it's talking about Vax position, although there's kind of really one dominant position there, or anything else. We like to try to give you all of that, whether it's controversial or not, in the magazine so that when you go to vote, you're kind of informed as to what's going on. And you don't just have that one mainstream media viewpoint. So that's really the goal there. It's a good magazine. I mean, there's lots of magazines that you can buy out there. And there's lots of really good publications that you can buy. Trending Politics magazine, we try to work with good writers, folks like Ben Shapiro, Dave Prager, Dennis Prager's in there, lots of other folks too. And then a whole staff of our own writers as well. So, we try to just put out a really quality piece. You will have to bear through like an editor's letter that I write. That's like usually pretty spicy. So you gotta read that. But aside from that, it's got great content in there. So yeah, we encourage people.
I love the letter to the editor. That's one of my favorite parts. And I gotta say too, what they're doing with the magazine is pretty important. And it's kind of our mission at the American Tribune is how do we start highlighting conservative voices? And you know what? We talk about supporting the show, like commenting and sharing. Go to our Substack and subscribe. Like Todd and I are normal dudes that run, like, we're our own business. And we work with a group of talented writers on our website who are small names that we want to help continue to bring up conservative voices. And what Matt's doing with Trending Politics News is great work. And like they're another Minnesota company that runs, they do some e-com, they do a lot of different things, and supporting operations like that is how we help win the culture war, because like we get to vote. You get to vote with your shares, folks. If you're on social media and you like, comment, and share, that's a vote. That's a vote that we like what these guys are doing. We like the message they're putting out, and how can we support it?
Yeah. And Webby, I was thinking about you asked the question, how are they going to censor that? Put on your tinfoil hat, Jason. I think once they roll out digital currency, if you're going to buy a stamp and put it on that conservative newsletter, you might be in trouble.
Yeah, you're not lying about that. That's probably right.
Actually, it's funny. There was one point when they were looking at sending the newsletter, and they were looking at cheaper options, because it still comes in like this nice kind of thick envelope that you can't tell what it is. And it was like, hey, can we cut down costs and help pass that on if we ship it a different way? But then it would be identified for what it was. And all of a sudden, the number of missing newsletters or damaged newsletters in the test went like through the roof. And it's like, not that the post office is full of a bunch of liberals, but someone out there didn't like picture President Trump on the cover, and poof.
What's funny is and Donald Trump has been on the cover a lot. So the first year that he was on the cover, almost every single edition of the magazine, Donald Trump was on there. Now it's about a third of the time. It's like whatever the prevailing story is. Well, this year, of course, the prevailing story has been Donald Trump. And so when they see on there, I showed you one, but this is a couple of months ago, Donald Trump's on the cover, right? So Jason's not lying about that. We literally have to put it in an envelope that you can't see through, so that the mailman who thinks that he's going to make family decisions for you decides that you're not going to get your magazine that month. So unfortunately, that's the world that we live in. But you know what, though, for those folks that get the magazine, I think that they get good information, and that makes it worth the risk of ordering it. So
they want to control what you read. They want to control what your kids learn at school. That sounds about right. It's par for the course, Webby.
It is. You're not lying about that.
All right. Well, Mr. Webster, we're getting close to the end of our segment here, and then we got to wrap up and get out. So what would you like to close with for our audience, and what parting thoughts? What impart your wisdom, Matt?
Yeah. Well, look, so I think that, first of all, just to piggyback onto what you said, super important to be watching shows like this, right? Consume as much of it as you can from independent sources that aren't the mainstream media. And I couldn't encourage people enough to do that. Obviously, this show, partial to, because, I know you guys, and you guys know me, and we all think very similarly, which is we want people to have the best information possible to make decisions, and from conservative value standpoint. But consume as much as you can. And I would say also, though, and this would be my parting thought, is know your enemy, right? So as much conservative news as like I'm plugged into all the time, and you guys are constantly plugged into, is I'm watching mainstream media almost as much as I am independent media. And the reason why is to see the dichotomy, to understand the difference in what it is that they're saying versus what might be the truth. And the only way that you're going to know that really is to sort of check the boxes off on both columns. So when you watch those shows and you see, whether it's anybody on CNN or really any of these other, the main thing that you have to think of is, okay, well, there's another point of view out there. Listen to that, find it, and then make your own decisions based on the information that you actually get yourself. But don't be lazy, right? Get out there and actually find this stuff, and make an effort to watch as much and consume as much as you can. I firmly believe that the more of this stuff that you consume, news from all different sources, the more informed and the best informed you will be when it comes time to make your decisions, which you really only do with a few things, right? You're either deciding with your wallet or you're deciding with your vote. Now, some people might feel like their vote is worth less because of all the monkey business that goes on with voting, but it only gets worse if we stop voting. So you can't do that. And for sure, you vote with your wallet. Absolutely. So support conservative companies and conservative movements, but consume as much information as you can. Just don't be lazy. It's out there. There's a world of information for you to grab. So get as much of it as you can. I enjoy it if you read Trending Politics Magazine, if you're reading American Tribune on the website, when you watch Freedom from the Press like today. But there's a lot more out there. So that would be my final thought, is get out there and get that information.
Excellent. Great thoughts, Webby. Todd, any final words for Webby before we kick him out of here? He's probably got work to do.
It was great to have you on. Webby, you set the bar really high, so any future guest that comes on the show is going to have to live up to the standard you set today. Appreciate you having on today, though.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Well, for sure, they're going to have an American flag, a declaration, and a constitution behind them in there.
Tall order.
in their studio office. So
there you go. Hey, next time we'll get you on here longer, Webby, so we can talk more politics.
Hey, man, I'm all about it. Absolutely, I'm all about it. You guys have a great day, but thank you very much for allowing me to be on the show and to be the first guest. I'm honored by that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Have a good day, Webby.
Right on, guys.
Oh, there we are, clicking through a few things. We're back, Jason.
Look at that.
I was just going to comment here. We're probably alienating our...
And for Todd for navigating through the logistics of having
it only took a few clicks here. And folks, thanks for bearing with us here. We are alienating most of the base here because we are all Minnesota right now. And so as you listen to the Viking jokes and listen to the weather, it comes from a good place. But, Jason, I think the Midwest values, not the politics from the Midwest, because Minnesota is quite blue. We've compared it to California before, but the Midwest conservative values, I think, speak to what most people want throughout the country.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that I think, folks in the Midwest, like farmer country, we got the crazies that live in Minneapolis that have no idea what they're doing and they're trying to destroy the country. But when you get outside, like we live north of the Twin Cities in some of the smaller communities, like there's normal people here. And, it's interesting because Matt talked about a couple great things and kind of points I'd like to leave with and wrap up. Folks, it would be nice if the media actually reported facts. We talked about a couple of weeks ago how they reported that we had all these new jobs created. And then at the American Tribune, we broke it down. We shared it on my Twitter page, how it turns out there were people getting second jobs and illegal immigrants that they were counting. And like none of that's helping America. But we don't have an honest press. So it's important that you find sources like us. And I love when people fact check us. I love when we get notes like, hey, have you seen this? And so don't hesitate to reach out. Twitter's a great spot to do that. I'm at JRob from Minnesota. And when you send us stuff or send us articles or send us different things, that helps keeps us honest. Because if you notice, sometimes the show can get a little sloggy because we're like showing the actual reports or here's the actual government report. And we do that. Like we changed our life so that we would have time to do that. So that we can help share the truth with people. So we appreciate your support. And for those who go to the AmericanTribune.news, like that's our deep dive stuff. AmericanTribune.com is kind of our funner, a little more mainstream stuff that we can talk about. And then the last point I have for tonight, and I'll turn it over to Todd to bring us home, is be intentional. So Todd and I both had jobs. We both like I was in corporate America for years. And my wife encouraged me to go do something to help change the country. Todd was in education, which we still need to get Todd's education episode. And he made a change to how can he help save America in our own little way. And we both made dramatic life changes. Like I gave up a pretty good job to go out on my own and run our own business and do this. And not everybody can do that. Not everybody can sit there and say, you know what, I'm going to throw caution to the wind and my wife's going to support it. And we're going to go do this crazy stuff. But there's things you can do. The power, like we've had between 100 and 200 people watching live on Facebook today. If every one of those people hit the share button, that gets word out to another 100 people and another 100 people. Be intentional. Say, hey, you know what? I'm going to mark down Fridays, 11 o'clock. I'm going to watch these guys' shows. Hey, I'm going to share this with somebody that I might not politically agree with. But be intentional about things you can do that can help save this country. Because right, left, center, most Americans have way more in common than we think.
Absolutely, Jason. I just have a couple of thoughts, too. I want to go back to how we opened the show with the Democrats against fake news. And you're getting a lot of shout outs to Democrat. I appreciate that people with opposing views, and I don't know if we were getting trolled, maybe this person just hopped in to leave the comment and bounced. But I like to think that there's going to be people that just want more information, and maybe you do come in to troll, but maybe you stick around to listen a little bit more too, and you hear some ideas that you're not regularly exposed to. Like we've said at the onset, this is the purpose of the show. And And Jason, to your point about kind of slogging through information, we take a full hour to cover things like Social Security or ethanol subsidies. Like, these are not sexy topics, but they're important topics for Americans to understand. And we can't compete against the 20-second soundbite that you get on Twitter or Instagram or Snapchat or what have you. So it takes a little dedication for people to actually commit to wanting to know what's happening. We try to provide that every week here. You can leave your feedback if we're accomplishing that or not. Jason, I think you and I have done a good job kind of going through the narratives and breaking down the information, but it takes a full hour to do that on just a single subject. So it is time consuming for us to go through, but time consuming for people to listen to as well and reflect on and digest. So there is that piece as well here. And Jason, I'd be remiss if I just didn't bring this up. I got to come back to the Biden tax stuff one more time, then we'll end the show here. Just to highlight the Joe Biden tax situation, he made 1.5% in salary of his earnings in 2017. Just to show what that would look like if Jason or I filled out our taxes, we both have S corps, just like Joe Biden did for 2017. If we made $100,000, we would be saying to the IRS that we took $1,500 in salary for the entire year. I'm just going to let that sit there. 1.5% of his total earnings were served as salary. If you think that's reasonable, we can have that debate next week. Leave it in the comments here. Otherwise, Jason, you want the last word?
Tax cheat? I was going to say, tell me again how Trump is the tax cheat. And I'm sure CNN's going to cover that, right, Todd?
Yeah, well, everything they said about Trump has come true under Biden. I guess nothing encapsulates that better than that one right there. But folks, we are hitting the hour mark here. Love to have Webby on today. That was really great to have a guest. We appreciate you tuning in and listening. The comment section was hopping today, so love the engagement. We didn't get to go through a lot of comments just with the topics and the guest, but we would love to get back to that next week. So if there's something you said that we didn't address, you think it's valuable, come join us next Friday at 11 o'clock Central, 12 Eastern. Pop that comment in again, and we'll definitely spend some more time going through some of your own thoughts. And Democrat Against Fake News, if you're still out there, come join us next week. Let's have a conversation. But thanks for listening, folks. Have a great weekend.